Welcome to the Business Finance Bulletin, episode 118. Welcome again to the latest Business Finance Bulletin. With me, Rob Warlow from Business Loan Services. In this bulletin, a look at what the crowdfunding world has been doing during the first quarter of 2016. Also, HSBC, what additional support they are giving growing SMEs. And sources of finance, where are business owners going and what's keeping them awake at night. And a business finance tip of the week, KYC, know your customer. What is it all about? Let's start this week's bulletin by taking a look at the crowdfunding or peer-to-peer world. What have they been doing in the first quarter of 2016? Well, the Peer-to-Peer Finance Association has just come out with its members' latest statistics on this first quarter of 2016. Now, the Peer-to-Peer Finance Association are a self-regulatory body comprising of 9 key crowdfunding or peer-to-peer sites, and they account for about 90% of the market. Firms who are part of the association include the likes of Funding Circle, RateSetter, Zopa, Market Invoice, Landbay, and so these are the ones who are extremely active in this space. And for the first quarter of 2016, they estimate that they have lent out a total of £715 million. Now, this compares to £660 million in the first quarter of 2015, and that's an increase of about 8%. Now, when we compare this to the amount of additional money that banks are lending, their annual growth rate is putting in at around 1%. So the 8% seems very generous. But it's clear we're not seeing the big stellar growth that we saw at the beginning. And this is a normal sign of a type of finance source that is beginning to mature. In terms of number of borrowers, and they estimate that in that first quarter there are now a total of 307,000 borrowers, and in total since 2010 their members have estimated that they've lent out a total of £5.1 billion. So we can see that the crowdfunding sector really is continuing to mature and is now almost becoming a first place of choice for many business owners. And we're certainly seeing at Business Loan Services many business owners now asking about crowdfunding, whereas many years ago we had to bring the topic up. So if you want to know more about crowdfunding and whether it can work for you, you can pop along to our website or drop us an email, info@businessloanservices.co.uk, and we'll chat you through the options. Turning now to the traditional high street lenders and the banks, and more evidence that banks are taking much more interest in UK small businesses. HSBC has just announced that it's launching a new fund totaling £10 billion of money that they've allocated to support UK small businesses. Last year, the same fund was about £8 billion, so an extra £2 billion being put out there. In addition to that, some small incentives as well for loans over £10,000 to limited companies where you're signing a personal guarantee in your capacity as director. They've reduced the signing fee from £80 down to £10. 18 months free banking, and also a fixed fee for monthly charges as well. So you can see a lot of interest now coming from the likes of HSBC to help businesses. But also the interesting announcement from them as well was the launch of an online platform where their businesses can now apply for loans direct without actually interacting with the bank manager. The HSBC facility called ScreenLink is there to also open bank accounts and sign documents electronically and download information. And you can see there's an increasing trend here. And in fact, in the previous bulletin, episode 117, we also shared Santander's announcement that they've just launched an online lending platform as well. So we can see that the high street banks are now beginning to learn from the alternative finance sector. As we know, in the crowdfunding world, you can apply for a loan directly online without actually speaking to anyone. So it's clear the banks are now beginning to pick up on this, not only to provide better service, because that's what people want to see as well, but also from the fact that it really does save banks costs. Less staff, less people doing business face to face. So really interesting development there from HSBC. If you want to know more, just go along to HSBC's website, and I'm sure there you'll find some more information on how you can access this new online service. What sources of finance are business owners turning to in the current market? Well, that's a question being posed by Hitachi Capital, the asset-based finance provider, as part of a recent survey they carried out amongst UK small businesses. Now, interestingly, of those who answered the survey, only 21% of them have said they've used external finance over the last 12 months, whether that be business loans, invoice discounting, leasing, and also peer-to-peer finance. So if it's only 21% using those type of products, where's the money coming from? Well, 30% of them say they're actually using their own money, their own resources, dipping into their savings accounts. And 7% of them are getting loans from family and friends. So you can see there's now a lot more emphasis on individuals bypassing the alternative finance sector and also the high street banks and financing growth themselves. Now, what about confidence? That's something that we've been looking at in the last couple of bulletins, and in this survey they found that 60% of business owners said they are anticipating that their businesses will stand still over the next 12 months, with only 6% planning any significant growth. Now, what other question they asked was, what is it that keeps business owners awake at night? And perhaps not surprisingly, just over 30% of them said cash flow, or perhaps better said, poor cash flow is the thing that is keeping them awake at night. Whereas we know there are solutions out there in terms of accessing money from tied up in outstanding invoices, various short-term loans, and also medium-term loans as well. So if you are one of those business owners tossing and turning at night, there are some solutions out there. Don't assume that you're going to get a no, either from your bank or alternative finance providers. And don't forget, just get in touch with us and we can help navigate that minefield for you. So a really interesting survey there about confidence levels and sources of finance. Don't assume there's a no, there could be a finance provider out there for you. On now to my business finance tip of the week. Know your customer, or KYC. Have you heard of this term? Well, if you've applied for a loan from a bank or another lender over the last few years, whilst you may not have specifically heard the term, you certainly would have gone through the process. And know your customer is as the name suggests. The bank or lender wants to know you. Who are you? They want to make sure that you are a person who exists. But more importantly, they want to make sure where your money that you may be contributing to your project is coming from. Really wrapped around this whole concept of anti-money laundering and to make sure your money are not coming from proceeds of crime. So if you are applying for a loan, there's a lot you can do to prepare in advance to speed up the process. And these are the documents that the banks are going to need. Let's go through that list. First of all, obviously, is your standard first name, middle name, last name, and your date of birth. Also your residential address. But residential address within the last 3 years. So if you've only been in your current place for 18 months, the bank will want to go back further to make sure they have a complete 3-year record. They'll also want a copy of a passport to prove who you are, and also a copy of a utility bill no more than 3 months old. Again, it'll link up with your residential address. And typically they also like to see sometimes up to 3 months bank statements so they can see the level of activity and what's coming in and out of your account. So those are the kind of basic KYC or know your customer requirements. So when you're going for a bank loan, as I said, be well prepared. Have all of these documents ready to identify yourself clearly to the bank that you are an upstanding member of society and not somebody with a shady past. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this bulletin, and as ever, if you did, please give it a like on social media and share it amongst your colleagues. If you're watching on the video version, of course, we've got the podcast version to download and listen to at your leisure, and you'll find this episode and previous bulletins on our SoundCloud, iTunes and Stitcher page. Just go to those channels and search for Business Finance Bulletin. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast version, you can watch the video version on my YouTube channel. Just go along to YouTube and search Rob Warlow. So that's it for this week. Thanks very much for being with me. I look forward to being with you again next week with more news, tips, ideas and strategies on raising finance and dealing with banks.